abundance. If tomorrow morning everybody woke up and did whatever it is that they were doing without expecting payment, one could I'm not saying this is the way to do it, but I'm just giving you another strange hypothetical thing to think about. If everybody woke up and did what they were doing, from the mining industry to everything, and then at the end of the month they were just allowed to have as much food as they needed, or every day as much food as they needed, as much electricity as they needed, as much water as they needed, to give them abundance and make them happy and keep them alive and their children alive, and suddenly their children could go to university because they don't have to pay for the university because it's free for everybody. One can very quickly transform the society into a whole new kind of contribution to society. That's not how I suggest we do it, however. There's another way to do it. And that is really, I believe, the way to do this is to take small communities. And I don't mean ostracized communities that a lot of people around the world are doing, setting up these little lager communities behind, on large farms, and they self-sustain, right. They got everything for themselves and exclude everybody else. You got to take existing towns and existing communities and take them off the grid and give them everything for free, including food. And small towns are capable of doing that.
You're talking also about a communal garden, right? And a communal, you said, eating halls and places, so that these things are available, in other words. And the other thing is that it generates, in other words, depending on the numbers of people that you gather together and the I guess the wealth of any particular area. In other words, here in your town you have running water, and so that you can put, you said, like a device into the running water that would basically generate free energy.
Yeah.
To power the light bulbs in the house and so on and so forth. And from there, it's actually about working together rather than working in competition with each other.
Exactly. You got to work together. And if you look at the mineral wealth of the country, the water, the resources, the farming community, if the farmers farm and provide food, if the miners mine and provide the elements that we need, the minerals, remember that when you take money out of the system, people aren't going to mine minerals to trade with them. So we're not going to need that much mining, and we're not going to mine gold and all this stuff because we want to sell it to somebody who's got a lot of money. So that's going to come down to a bare minimum. But not only that, what contributionism does, it provides a fertile ground for new technology to surface. And all the free energy that's been suppressed by the Illuminati and the control of money suddenly has a very fertile ground to start coming out. And we start seeing sprouting new energy ideas and scientists and inventors everywhere that are going to bring abundance of different types of free energy in all forms that we can't even imagine right now.
Right. I'm having trouble, staying awake in this ruins.
Well, so while we quickly digress, I want you to say the effect that these ruins have had on you.
It's just that there's very powerful energy here, and it's very relaxing. That's all I know how to talk about it. I mean, it's actually kind of putting me to sleep, and so, I feel like, I'm just sort of melting into the stones, so to speak. There's something going on here energetically, and it's not a negative thing, but it's probably, affecting the interview to some degree. The energy is very powerful.
Well, we're going to put all the positive energy into this tape, into the interview, so when people watch this, they pick up the same energy.
Yeah, I mean, each spot is a little different, and we've come to a little bit, the different spot here, and it comes up from the rocks, you see.
Well, already from what we've discussed before that you've got recorded is that we know that these stone ruins are alive. As soon as we figure out how to convert this into useful energy, and maybe Dan Burish will step up to the plate and help us with this, because he might have information or knowledge and technology to help us convert this. If he can't, we'll find someone out there. We have discovered free energy right here. We're sitting in it.
Yes.
And it never stops. It's free and it's ongoing. And we have millions of them.
But it's really fascinating. I just have to get back to this sort of, the idea that you're coming up with a sort of a model for society that will not, that's really based on, in a sense, free energy.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the root of it. In other words, I think, you know, when we become more and more in tune with the fact that all we are is energy anyway, then we're just talking about transmuting energy from one place to another, to one form to another. And in essence, that's what they seem to have tapped into here with this, with the placement of the stones, with the nature of the stones, with the use of sound technology for moving the stones.
To come back to what you said about the Anunnaki and having also to live here among these stone ruins, this is leading edge technology. I mean, you know, you got to go a long way. You got to transcend into a spiritual realm from this physical realm, or what we believe to be a physical realm, to a spiritual realm, to move to another kind of technology. You know, you got to go to the Merkaba technology from here. It's like the next leap from here, in my opinion. You go from, this is the sort of leading edge, stone age, physical material technology on planet Earth, using sound and frequency in very simplistic ways, playing with the conversion from one frequency to the next, which will include the extraction of metals and minerals from the ore and using it for all kinds of things, and then moving from this technology to the next step would be the Merkaba, where you don't need physical material, and that we just surround yourself with light and you travel through space-time and time-space, right?
Well,
so,
I mean, but there's also the sense that this could be a time machine.
Yeah, that creates a Merkaba.
Yes,
Yeah.
or a transportation device of some kind. In other words, I mean, you know, just sort of playing with the idea, but it's possible that we're talking about a civilization that wanted to communicate with back to Nibiru.
Yeah.
And maybe there was something going on here in terms of communication and the generation of energy, which would send information back and forth between the planets. It's an amazing thing. I'm sitting here with you, and right now my right foot is placed on a stone, and the stone is so powerful that my foot is vibrating. It's like I feel that energy, and I'm wondering also, you see, we don't know what we've got here, and this could be activating our DNA.
Yeah.
It could be, you know, I mean, maybe humanity blew them away at that point. Maybe they lost control of them at that point.
That is a very important thing that you brought up. I write about that in Slave Species of God, where I suggest that the way the Anunnaki lost control of the human race was they didn't count on the rapid evolution of our DNA. And I believe you just put your finger right into the problem, that the energy in these stone ruins that they made them create actually enhanced and speeded up the evolution of the human DNA, which they expected to evolve a lot slower, but this was the catalyst.
Yes.
I really feel that there's some important information in there and some elements of truth and science that we don't yet understand. But I think we're starting to get more and more of that information about the DNA and what we know about it, that it's a receptor and transmitter and information and light and certain lights and well, what is light? Light is a frequency. So light, certain frequencies activate and speed up the activation of the genes in our DNA and so forth. So this is all linked together. So
we may be getting smarter by the minute here.
Well, I can see, since we've sat down, you're about 10 years younger. Yeah.
There you go.
But you know what? Just to come back to this mining thing, and nothing has changed, okay? If you go into the mines today, who's doing all the hard labor? It's the poorest of the poor. They take them from the rural areas, they promise them a life and promise them money that they can come and earn and send back to their families that live in the rural areas in the bush. So these guys come out of the bush and they get trained to be mine workers, and they go underground, they work in the mines. What happens? They get trained to use advanced technology that to them is very advanced technology. They get shown how to use, you know, pneumatic drills and other advanced technology by pushing buttons and driving these tractors and using, you know, all these things. They don't know where that technology comes from. They just know how to use it. If you had to stop that technology and ask those mine workers, well, build me these things, well, do you think they'd be able to build it? Of course not. They just know how to use it. And that's exactly what is going on here.
Well, I think that there's also another clue going on here, which is if the Anunnaki came here and they created, ultimately they were mining gold. They came to the planet to mine gold. That's the premise. Well, what you're talking about is a culture, the Anunnaki, who know about mining. In other words, they know how to go to planets, determine what the ores and elements and gemstones and whatever's in the earth. And of course, earth is very rich, and to this day, it's very rich.
Of course, it's
and
very rich.
I have whistleblowers that are telling me the gold to this day is being taken off the planet. Okay, at this very time by the same Anunnaki who came here originally. And so you have to look at the situation, and you have to say they would naturally investigate the nature of the stones to begin with. So they would tap into the fact that the amount of silica in each of these stones, in other words, gold is one kind of a resource, but these stones are actually another kind of resource, and they may know this from their own planet, right?
Exactly. And as you know, they chose all these stones specifically. What I've already pointed out in my presentations, and to use that, all the ruins were originally built from the same stone, exactly the same stone that we're sitting on.
And the stone is not indigenous to this place, is that right?
Not necessarily. Well, it's indigenous to the part of the continent,
okay,
but it's not necessarily indigenous to where the ruins are.
Like here.
Like here. Here the stone was brought from down at the bottom in the valleys near the river, brought up to the top of the mountain. And as you know,
how?
You know,
how would you? These are massively heavy stones.
Exactly. So they must have had, I guess they had, you know, the levitation technology with sound. They went down to the bottom, they picked up a big pile of these rocks, they brought them up to the top of the mountain, dumped them here. Then they activated the energy coming out of planet Earth, okay, and allowed the stones
to find their place.
Find their place in accordance to the energy fields, like in cymatics, the shape of the sound frequency coming out of the Earth. Now you've created a plug point for the energy coming out of the Earth. Now if you activate these stones that ring like bells, they're full of silica dioxide, and they're good conductive properties because of the iron as well. Now you've got a very complex energy generating device. But what I find fascinating is, you brought that up, we spoke about this before, is the terraces. You know, today, in modern mining today, you don't see farmers building terraces. Right? It just doesn't happen. They plow the lands, they plow large tracts of lands and fields, and they plant the mealies, the maize, they plant the corn and the wheat and everything, and then they harvest it, right? Well, these guys didn't. They had the same land available to them, but they chose not to do that. They chose to build very intricate terraces for thousands of miles of terraces to plant food. Now, isn't that a bit wacky? You know? The only reason you'd want to do that is if you knew that you had the energy to channel through the walls of the terraces, just like you channel the energy through the walls of these ruins, from ruin to ruin. So you channel the energy through your agricultural terraces to maximize the growth and speed up the growth of the produce that you're growing. And now you're dealing with really advanced knowledge and culture that we've only discovered recently, and we know the incredible effect sound has on the growth of plants, and certain other frequencies, and even thought patterns that have on the growth of plants. You know, the thought of going into a room and cutting a plant sends the plant into shock.
Right. Well, the terraces idea is really a mystery, right? Because now I don't know anything about the Bantu people, but my understanding is that I'm thinking they're nomadic.
Well, they arrived. We're told that they arrived from the northwest Africa, and they northwest and northeast Africa. They migrated their way down into southern Africa, and then they settled here eventually settling here around 300-400 years ago, and maybe not even that far back. So they were moving down from Africa all the way down for 2,000 years, or about 1,700 years. Okay, that's what we get told. Well, that's not what these stone ruins tell us. Okay, they tell us a completely different story, that this was a densely populated part of the world with high knowledge, high technology. We see all the symbols and symbolism and artifacts that are used in Egypt and Sumeria and other parts of the world that originate here, from the Ankh to the Sphinx to the Horus stone to the wheel to the cross, the cross in a circle, all these things that originate here. And that sends shockwaves through some people because they just can't wrap their heads around that.
Right. Well, they're also, I mean, we're talking 300,000 years. Isn't that what you basically, that's the ballpark dating of the...
That's the ballpark dating done by geneticists when they say that, you know, according to the mitochondrial Eve, the first humans appeared on Earth between 170 and 300,000 years ago. And if you read Uriel's Machine, you'll get that information in that book. And
But the stones themselves, I mean, these stone walls and Adam's calendar, is it dated actually to that point, or